Imagine you are a smuggler creeping through the arid hills of North Africa under the cover of a moonless night. You are not carrying gold or jewels or state secrets. Your prize is a plant, a stalk of what looks like wild celery with delicate yellow flowers and a thick, gnarled root. But to the ancient world, this is a treasure more valuable than any precious metal. If you're caught, the punishment is torture, enslavement, or even execution. Why would anyone risk their life for a simple herb? This was the reality for those who dared to steal Silphium, the most sought-after, mysterious, and ultimately tragic plant in human history. It was a seasoning that drove gourmands wild, a medicine that doctors hailed as a panacea, and, most controversially, a substance that offered something revolutionary: control. Its story is a microcosm of our own, a tale of wealth, power, sex, and the catastrophic consequences of human greed. And it all begins in one very specific place on Earth. Our story starts in the 7th century BCE, on the coast of what is now modern-day Libya. A group of Greek colonists, driven from their homeland by drought and political strife, founded the city of Cyrene. For a while, they struggled, but then they discovered a local botanical jackpot. In a narrow 125-mile strip of coastal plateau, and nowhere else on the planet, grew a wild, uncultivatable plant the locals called Silphium, which we know by its Latin name, Silphium. What did it look like? The ancient writers left us tantalizing clues. It had a thick stalk, hollow like fennel, which could be roasted, sautéed, or boiled. Its roots were covered in a dark bark, and when you cut into them, a pungent, milky sap would ooze out. This sap, called Lyserpicium, was the most valuable part. It was dried and grated over food, a flavor enhancer so potent and desirable that it became the signature taste of Roman fine dining. The plant's leaves were compared to parsley, and its small yellow flowers grew in a dense cluster. Perhaps most famously, its fruit, or its seed pod, was said to be shaped like a heart. Remember that detail. It becomes incredibly important later. The people of Cyrene quickly realized they were sitting on a gold mine. Since Silphium stubbornly refused to be cultivated anywhere else, they had a complete and total monopoly. The plant and its precious resin became the sole driver of their economy. They minted coins not with the faces of their rulers, but with the image of their true king, the Silphium plant. These coins are historical marvels. You can see detailed depictions of the stalk, the flowers, and that distinctive heart-shaped seed. Some coins even show a woman pointing to the plant with one hand while touching her womb with the other, a powerful hint at its most celebrated use. The wealth that poured into Cyrene from the Silphium trade was staggering, turning the remote colonial outpost into one of the richest and most splendid cities in the ancient world. They built grand temples, theaters, and gymnasiums, all funded by this one miraculous herb. So, what exactly was it used for? At first glance, its applications seem varied, but not world-changing. As a culinary ingredient, it was the height of luxury. Apicius, the famous Roman gourmet, included Silphium in hundreds of his recipes. It was grated over everything from braised flamingo and roasted peacock to simple lentils and beans. Its flavor was described as powerful and unique, perhaps something akin to a combination of onion, garlic, and asafoetida, a related plant we still use today. Its stalk was considered a delicacy, and even the roots were eaten. It was also used to create an expensive perfume. On this level, Silphium was like the saffron or white truffle of its day, a status symbol for the elite, but hardly something to risk your life for. But the culinary uses were just the beginning. The ancient medical texts are where the story gets truly interesting. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, recommended it for a host of ailments. Pliny the Elder, the Roman naturalist who documented seemingly everything, wrote extensively about Silphium in his work Natural History. He described it as a cure-all, a panacea prescribed for everything from coughs, fevers, and indigestion to snake bites, epilepsy, and even leprosy. A poultice made from the root could supposedly remove warts. Its juice, mixed with wine, was a remedy for a sore throat. It was considered so vital that it was a staple in every Roman physician's medical kit. This incredible range of uses already made it immensely valuable, far beyond the simple spice. An effective, all-purpose medicine in an age of plagues and mysterious illnesses was worth a fortune. But even that doesn't fully explain the mania surrounding Silphium. It doesn't explain the state-controlled monopoly, the threat of execution for smugglers, or the fact that it was stored in the Roman state treasury alongside gold bullion. To understand that, we have to talk about its most potent and most secret application: its use as the ancient world's most effective form of birth control. In a society with no access to modern medicine, childbirth was one of the leading causes of death for women, and for families, both rich and poor, having too many children could be an economic disaster. The ability to control reproduction was not just a matter of convenience, it was a matter of life and death, of female autonomy and family stability. The ancient sources are surprisingly explicit on this. Cyrene of Ephesus, a 2nd century Greek physician who specialized in gynecology, wrote a comprehensive guide for midwives. In it, he clearly describes methods for preventing conception and for bringing about a delayed period. For the latter, he recommends taking a dose of Silphium, the size of a chickpea, dissolved in water once a month. The implication is clear. Other writers, like the poet Catullus, associated Silphium with love and passion, writing of kisses as numerous as the grains of sand on the Silphium-bearing shores of Cyrene. The visual evidence is perhaps even more compelling. Remember those heart-shaped seeds depicted on the coins of Cyrene? Today, the heart shape is the universal symbol of love. But where did that association come from? A human heart doesn't actually look like that. Some scholars now believe that the symbol of love originated with the seed of the Silphium plant. Its shape became inextricably linked with romance, sex, and the control over procreation that it provided. The heart symbol, seen everywhere on Valentine's Day, may not be a stylized organ at all, but the ghost of a long-extinct plant that gave women power over their own bodies. A safe, effective, and orally ingested contraceptive would have been, without exaggeration, one of the most revolutionary discoveries in human history. It would be worth more than gold. It would be something a government would kill to protect, and something an individual would risk death to obtain. The demand would be limitless. And this brings us back to the crime. The government of Cyrene understood exactly what they had. They knew that their monopoly was fragile, resting entirely on the fact that the plant grew nowhere else. So they protected it with an iron fist. The harvest was strictly regulated. They established official quotas, dividing the precious pasture land into sections and carefully managing how much could be harvested each year. This was one of the earliest known examples of conservation law. But it wasn't just about sustainability. It was about control. Guards would have patrolled the Silphium fields day and night. Any unauthorized person found in the area would be under immediate suspicion. Smuggling just a small amount of the dried resin or attempting to steal a live plant in a futile effort to transplant it was a direct attack on the state's economic foundation. The penalties were, by necessity, extreme. While specific laws are lost to time, historians infer from the plant's immense value that punishments would have included exorbitant fines, confiscation of property, enslavement for debtors, and almost certainly death for organized smugglers. Export was a state-run enterprise, and any merchant caught with black market Silphium would face the full wrath of the Cyrenian and later Roman authorities. When Rome eventually annexed the region in the 1st century BCE, they inherited the Silphium trade and its immense profits. The Romans were obsessed with the plant. It was so valuable that Julius Caesar, upon seizing control of the public treasury during the Civil War in 49 BCE, found not only 15,000 bars of gold and 30,000 bars of silver, but also a stash of 1,500 pounds of silphium resin. Think about that. An herb was being stored in the central vault of the most powerful empire on Earth, right alongside its bullion. This wasn't just a spice, it was a strategic national asset. The demand from the sprawling Roman Empire was insatiable, far exceeding anything the Greeks had required. And this insatiable demand would ultimately sow the seeds of the plant's own destruction. How does a species that defined a civilization, funded a kingdom, and was stored alongside gold simply vanish from the face of the earth? This is the central tragedy of the Silphium story. By the 1st century CE, just a few hundred years after it reached the peak of its fame, the plant was becoming dangerously scarce. Pliny the Elder, writing around 77 CE, laments its decline. He notes that in his own time, Silphium was exterminated. The primary culprit, he suggests, was simple, unchecked greed. The tax farmers who leased the public pasture lands in Cyrenaica were overgrazing them with sheep. Sheep, it turns out, loved the taste of silphium, and it was believed to make their meat exceptionally tender. But the tax farmers also discovered that the land itself was being exhausted. The insatiable demand from Rome meant that harvesting quotas were ignored. The conservation efforts of the Cyrenean Greeks gave way to a Roman free-for-all, a desperate rush to extract as much profit as possible as quickly as possible. They were killing the goose that laid the golden egg. The plant was likely overharvested to the point where it could no longer naturally reproduce. There may have been other factors at play. The climate of North Africa has changed over the last 2,000 years, becoming hotter and more arid. This process of desertification may have destroyed the unique microclimate that Silphium required to survive. It's possible that a combination of human greed and climate change delivered a fatal 1-2 punch. The end, when it came, was swift and ignominious. Pliny the Elder records a profoundly sad moment in history. He writes that during his lifetime only a single stalk of Silphium was found. It was considered such a rare curiosity that it was harvested and delivered as a gift to the Emperor Nero, a man known more for his decadence than his wisdom. Nero likely viewed it as a novelty, ate it, and in that moment, an entire species, a cornerstone of ancient medicine and commerce, became officially extinct. The golden plant was gone forever. Or was it? For nearly 2 millennia, the story ended there. Silphium became a botanical ghost, a legend whispered by classicists and historians. But in the world of science, a mystery like this is an irresistible challenge. Botanists have long scoured the Mediterranean, searching for a plant that matches the ancient descriptions. For decades, the consensus was that it was a species of giant fennel from the genus Ferula, but which one? Many were proposed, but none quite fit. The true Silphium seemed lost to time. Then, in 2021, the story took a stunning turn. A paper by Professor Mahmut Miski, a researcher from Istanbul University, proposed a shocking new candidate. He had been studying a plant called Ferula druidiana, which grows in a tiny, isolated region of Anatolia in modern-day Turkey. As he studied it, the puzzle pieces began to click into place. Ferula druidiana has a thick stalk, yellow flowers, and a powerful, pungent smell. Its root system is complex and produces a resinous gum with powerful medicinal properties. When he had the chemical compounds in the resin analyzed, he found it was packed with dozens of substances known for their anti-inflammatory, cytotoxic, and, yes, contraceptive properties. It was a veritable chemical powerhouse, matching the ancient descriptions of Silphium as a panacea. Second, the location. While it's in Turkey, not Libya, it grows in a region that was once home to ancient Greek colonists, just like Cyrene. And it grows near the city of Cappadocia, whose ancient inhabitants were known for their trade with the Cyreneans. Is it possible that ancient traders, in a desperate and secret attempt, successfully transplanted a few live specimens 2,000 years ago, and that a tiny population managed to survive hidden in the Turkish mountains?
The most compelling evidence, however, is anecdotal. Professor Miesky discovered that local shepherds in the region have known about this plant for generations. They told him that if their goat or sheep graze on it during early pregnancy, it induces miscarriages. The plant's powerful abortifacient properties, the very thing that likely made Silphium so valuable, are still recognized in modern folk knowledge. Even more astonishing, he found that in a single season, one plant's root system could spread and produce several new plants. This matches Pliny's description of how Silphium spread, and suggests that if left alone, the plant is a resilient survivor. So, is Ferula druidiana the legendary Silphium, rediscovered after 2,000 years? The evidence is tantalizing, but the jury is still out. The location remains the biggest sticking point. The ancient sources were adamant that Silphium grew only in Cyrene. Could they all have been mistaken, or part of a deliberate campaign of misinformation to protect the monopoly? Or is Ferula druidiana simply a very close cousin, a different branch of the same family tree which shares many of the same properties? The definitive answer may require more research, including DNA analysis of ancient residues found in shipwrecks or pottery.
The quest for Silphium is not over, but its story, whether it ends with Nero or continues in the mountains of Turkey, remains one of the most powerful cautionary tales from the ancient world. It is a story about a unique gift from nature, a plant that offered flavor, healing, and personal freedom. But it is also a story of human short-sightedness, of how unchecked demand and greed can wipe a priceless resource from the earth forever. We risked execution to smuggle it. We stored it with our gold, and we drove it to extinction because we could not control our desire for it. Silphium is a ghost that haunts us, a heart-shaped seed of an idea. It reminds us that the line between treasure and tragedy is often just a matter of our own wisdom, and that the most valuable things in our world are often the most fragile.